Welcome to the Miami Heat Zone podcast. We're pushing to 6,000 subscribers. Make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button, and thank you for all the support. So today we have two great guests. So Adrian, we'll start with you. Just shout out your channel and let the people know where they can find you on YouTube and just what your channel is pretty much about.
So at Rainy Day Pod, we just pretty much talk about all South Florida sports, mainly covering the Panthers, the Heat, the Dolphins, and of course the Dolphins, and then of course the uh
The
the
Miami.
Miami Hurricanes. My fault.
Got you.
Yeah, man. But yeah, at Rainy Day Pod, man. Actually dropping the 33rd episode tonight at 8. So
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and this is Christopher from the Off Ball Takes podcast. I got a co-host, Yarby Laws. He's been on here before. We just talk about general NBA stuff. We do it on Mondays and Fridays, so we'll probably have a new episode up, I guess, a couple of days from now. So just check us out.
All right. So of course, all this different, Jimmy Butler news that is starting to come up. So Chris, we'll start with you. Like, how do you just feel about this whole Jimmy Butler situation where it's like they gave him like $150 million plus after the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people, they don't realize, like, Pat Riley never said he wasn't going to pay the man. He just said, wait till the offseason and then we could talk about money. So what do you think is going on? I know both sides right now, they're saying various things, but what do you think about what's going on right now?
Yeah, I remember like in the summer, I think we were on here, both Yarby and I, and we were talking about the idea that it probably is time to, like, kind of just split that up because it seemed like the window's probably closed. Not really a whole lot you can do with the team as currently constructed if you want to win the title. It's just the problem was at the time, like, what's the package? Which team wants him? What do you want back? And that's kind of just been the issue. I think I was a little bit more surprised, at how, just like a couple weeks ago, it started to get really ugly, obviously, when he started kind of being in the mode of, kind of just not really participating in these games, just kind of, just going through the motions. And I know he's had those type of situations before, but I kind of do look at it as like, I understand where both sides are coming from because I understand from Jimmy's perspective why he still wants a max deal, right? Because he's in the later part of his career, right? So obviously he wants to make as much money as he can. But if you're the Heat, you also have to look at it from the perspective of, do we actually really want to pay this guy 50 plus million a year when he's probably not going to play much more than 60 or so games? You got to win regular season games and get a high seed if you want to win the title. And, that it just feels like it might have run its course. So it's something where once the rift, I guess, between Pat Riley and Jimmy Butler started kind of popping up when Jimmy Butler said we would have beaten the Celtics and the Knicks, right? If we were healthy. And then Pat Riley says, keep your mouth shut. Once that happened, it seemed like it was kind of getting ready to veer towards the end. I know they also weren't able to get Lillard, so they didn't really improve the roster like you might have hoped for. The Rozier thing hasn't worked out. So it's something that is not too surprising, but I guess it is kind of disappointing just given the fact that initially it seemed like it went better than you would have thought. 2 NBA finals, even though you didn't win. But it seems like it's just kind of ran its course, and you just kind of have to figure out, what the best package is at this point, because I don't know. I know he came back and he played in the Nuggets game, but it just seems like it might be an untenable situation. But, they're standing pat until they get a good deal, and I can't really fault them for that because you don't really want to necessarily just completely get nothing back, but we'll see.
And go ahead, Adrian.
yeah, man. Like I was on the beginning of in the season and on your show, bro. Like I've been saying I'm pretty much on the same boat as Christopher, man. Like before the season, I think we would have got way more than what we're gonna get now. Now it's just looking like, hey, we just gonna take whatever we can get. And yeah, they're gonna take the best that's available for them. But what is that gonna be now? You done created this whole mess when this could have been over with before the season even started, man. It could have been done. And now we're just gonna get whatever we can take because you're not just gonna let him walk out the door with nothing. And then there's reports saying, oh yeah, he could sign the player option and facilitate a trade that way. But like at this point, who is willing to take Jimmy with all this mess he done created? I know Pat deserve a lot of blame too, and even Spo, for some of the rotations he done played. So, but Jimmy, like at the same time, Jimmy with the pouting and all that, who gonna want that on their team, man? As soon as he get unhappy, you gonna start doing that type of stuff, and then Ain't nobody gonna want that, bro. So I feel like we missed our opportunity to get what we could have gotten. We could have got so much more than what we're gonna get now. And this is what it is, man. Miami Heat, we dropped the ball on that. Pat dropped the ball on that, and Jimmy pouted his way to now where we're gonna get pretty much scraps, bro. So
Well, I
that's
mean,
how I feel, man.
like I just think that they didn't think, all right, because like a lot of people will say, oh, well, um, like if the Miami Heat knew they weren't going to pay Jimmy, they should have traded him. But I don't think that they thought Jimmy Butler was going to come out here and half-ass. Because don't get me wrong, Pat Riley, he absolutely deserves some of the blame. Things obviously didn't go our way. Like, Victor Oladipo didn't pan out. Tyler Herro, multiple injuries, broke his hand. Jimmy got injured, Bam got injured, Kyle Lowry got injured. So there was a lot of things that didn't go our way. But the fact that we really had no four since 2020, we've had no reliable backup five for years now. We've been really small every single year. That comes down to roster construction. But I just didn't like the Miami Heat didn't expect Jimmy to come out here and troll because think about it, guys. Like he really made his situation worse by coming out here taking one-legged threes, pretty much quitting on the team, which is crazy because you might be able to beef with the front office, but don't quit on your teammates. So, Chris, what do you think about when people say that, Pat Riley didn't give Jimmy Butler enough help? But once again, at the same time, obviously things didn't go our way. And he's under contract right now for $48.8 million. Plus, Adrian just said next season he can opt into $52 million. All I'm really hearing right now is money. So what do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough part, with the situation, because we've talked about it on our podcast, right? The idea that it seems like I think you can kind of find blame on both sides, right? Like you can talk about Riley not being able to get Lillard or whatever other pieces you want, like you mentioned, not having a backup big, right? Not having a lot of athletes. So we get all that. But also, like when you're Jimmy Butler and you're getting paid $50+ million a year, you still kind of need to show up and play. If you only play 60 games a year, you can't really be shocked if you're going to be a lower seed. And then you go out in the first round to a team that maybe if you won a few more games, right, and you're top 4 seed, you don't have to face them until the conference finals, or maybe not at all. So that's kind of the issue there. So that's where I kind of put some blame on both sides. But I do kind of understand, the frustration that everybody has because it seemed like you need to pick a direction, right? You kind of either need to get ready to blow it up with Jimmy or you got to go all in. But like Adrian said, they missed the chance, right? Like they kind of waited too long to try to deal him. And now whatever you get back for him is just whatever, right? Like you're probably not getting back a young star. You're probably not getting back a lot of draft compensation. You're probably just going to get stuff, whatever that is. You just kind of deal with it, and then you kind of move on into the next era, whatever that may be, right? Herro's had a really good season, so that's a silver lining. But outside of that, it's tough. And I don't really know, what comes after that just because of the fact that, it just, like you said, the way that it cratered so quickly with him just kind of quitting on the team. And he's had the reputation in the past for the previous teams he's been on where, they don't end all that great. But you felt like the Heat seemed like the perfect situation for him, right? Because like it's a team where it's his team, right? It's his type of guys. And, again, they had success in, getting to the finals, but it just seemed like it just hasn't worked out. And, now you're kind of left holding the bag and just kind of wonder, what can happen next. But there's not a whole lot he can do either, right? Because if he opts out, there's no teams really with cap space other than Brooklyn. I don't think Brooklyn really wants to sign him to a max deal. And then, the other teams, do they want him? Like if you're Golden State, do you want to gut your team for Jimmy Butler when you probably still don't really have a chance to win with him? Probably not, right? Sacramento Kings, what's the point? Houston, you're probably better off rolling with your young guys. Well, name a team you want, and that's kind of the issue there. So you're just kind of in like the worst case scenario where nobody's happy, and whatever the final solution is, it probably won't be pretty.
Yeah, but Adrian, don't you think that like if he comes back? So listen, last night his body language was terrible, and once again, I get it. He said that there's a lot of things that's going to come out. The truth is going to come out about certain things. I know a lot of people will say, the Miami Heat, they didn't go all in for certain trades. Who knows if that's true? I think they've given Jimmy Butler a lot of privileges. It's already been reported. He's been 30 miles away from the team. He's been with like completely Airbnbs, hotels. So, he said it out of his own mouth himself. The Miami Heat have allowed me to be me. You know what I'm saying? So they've given him, those superstar reigns where they didn't give that to their franchise guy and Dwayne Wade. So now that he's here, and listen, last night his body language was terrible. I don't know, like if you guys watched the game, but his body language towards his teammates were absolutely horrendous. If he just plays for the next 3 weeks at a very high level, that will be able to open up. Because guys, we got to remember these teams are going to be desperate. Teams like the Golden State Warriors, where Stephen Curry's putting pressure on the front office. I want to win a championship, And then you have other teams out there that I'm sure the Milwaukee Bucks, they've been reported, to Jimmy Butler as well. They're even willing to get off of Middleton. So don't you guys think that if Jimmy Butler can really play at somewhat of a high level these next few weeks, that's going to even increase the 3-team, 4-team, 5-team deal that the Miami Heat can potentially get. So what do you think about that, Adrian?
I think he gonna be as stubborn as Jimmy Butler done been. And like I'm glad you said last night about his body language, because there were people saying, "Oh, Jimmy looks engaged and all this." I'm like, bro, I don't know what game y'all watching. Like this dude looked like he ready to he looked like he got his bags packed and he's just waiting for something, waiting for the call. Hey, yeah, you going here, you going here. That's it. But then at the same time, he's saying first he says, "Oh, I'll play for any other team than Miami." Then, "Oh, I only play for these teams." It's like, who wants that on their team, man? Like, let's be real. Who wants that? You 35, you're gonna be 35 and up, like for the rest of your career. Like you're on the downslope. You want pretty much a million per game that you play. You only play 60 games, so you want a million per game? Like, get out of here, dude. I don't know. I love Jimmy, man, but the way this going, like, it's crazy. And and like everybody's saying, he not the one. He there's blame on all sides. So he's not the one that taking all, but just the way he handling the situation is like very unprofessional, and nobody expected it. So it's like it's not what you want. Like it's if Dwayne Wade would have did this, people would have turned on him the same way. And it don't matter if he was the greatest Heat player of all time. If Dwayne Wade would have started pouting, saying this and that, then everybody would have turned on him too. It would have been boos if he would have got suspended and came back just like Jimmy last night, man. But man, Jimmy, I don't know, man. I don't see any good way this gonna end, either with him leaving a free agency or even if he opt in. Like, I don't think anybody's giving anything up just because they know we're desperate because the way he's acting. So it's like, oh, they have to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, but as we get closer to the trade deadline, I really do teams because there's various teams right now. There's a lot of teams. It's just that the Miami Heat don't like what they're being offered. So I just think
Yeah.
that as we get closer to the trade deadline, you're going to have more thirsty teams that want to improve. The Toronto Raptors, they said that they want to be involved just because they want to see like who they can get off of so that they can receive assets. So there's a lot of different things that can come into the mix. But Chris, what do you think about Bam Adebayo this season? He's been struggling. I guess with the new offense, you can kind of say, okay, well, they play like this 5-out offense, but we were expecting Bam to be 20 and 10. He looks passive. This Miami Heat team, I know a lot of people want to cook Bam, but they do not do any justice by Bam by putting a 6'5" Haywood Highsmith, at the 4. And even though we have Khalil Ware, which I think he's been pretty decent this year, but he's not an NBA rotational backup 5.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we talked about. I remember in the summer when we were talking about how well he played in the Olympics, right? And it was kind of, is he going to take the leap to the next step, the next tier of players? And he hasn't this year, unfortunately, right? And like you look at his numbers, he's giving you 16 and 10, but he's been like a 20 and 10 guy the last few years. I know he's taken some more threes. He's not shooting like an amazing percentage on them, right? He's like 28% from 3. Inside the arc, right, is kind of where everything's also just kind of falling apart. So I understand what you talked about. And, we talked about the roster construction for them, where it would be nice to see if you could experiment with maybe some lineups where he's at the 4 next to some type of bigger rebounding, rim protecting center, so that way he doesn't have to do every single thing as opposed to just these smaller lineups. And that's kind of the tough part, where it's like, if you have a star player, like, yeah, obviously they have to produce, but there's also ways you can put better pieces around them to get the best version of them, right? Like even the guys that are the best players in the league, right? There are certain types of players where, like, yeah, you could put a guy that doesn't fit next to them and maybe their numbers don't change that much, right? If you're talking about the superstars, but if you really want to get the best out of them, like say like a Luka, right? If you put like four other guys that just score and don't defend at all, right? You're gonna get still offensively a good version of Luka, but it's gonna look even worse on defense because there's nothing to cover up for that. But if you get the right pieces around him, that's how you can get a version of Dallas that's a good defensive team. So that's the thing that stinks for Bam is, Herro's had a really good year. And I think if you got the Herro jump plus the Bam jump, then you could kind of get away with maybe a slightly worse version of Jimmy and you'd still be, relatively good. But, without the Bam leap, that's kind of the tough part this year. So I think he can bounce back. But this season hasn't been one of his best. And again, like there's a large amount of pressure on him, especially with Jimmy missing a decent amount of time too, because that hurts.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Adrian.
man. Yeah, I just think the whole Bam thing, like maybe not have him guarding 1 through 5. Maybe put him at the 4. Maybe trade Jimmy for a big. You know what I'm saying? And get some picks because that's probably what you're looking at. And just get somebody that can help Bam out, in that paint where Bam it'll free him up, let him do his thing. But I just feel like sometimes Bam not having a great year statistically, but like at the same time, you might be asking him to do way too much as far as, what he's been doing. And then, Tyler's picking up the slack on offense. And we all know Bam is not an aggressive player. He can be at times, but he really hasn't been in his whole career, especially in the playoffs. So I wouldn't, say like, man, he passive or anything, but that's just him. So yeah, he plays defense very hard, but his offense ain't never been like I would say elite. So, but I think you get a real 5, and put him at the 4, and you'll see a better Bam.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, Tyler
Mm-hmm.
Herro, he's having a very good season so far. Do you think that he's an all-star this season?
I think
And
he's
what has
played.
changed for him as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess more opportunities, right, with the ball in his hands. I know they kind of switched the starting 5 where Rozier, I don't think, is really a starter anymore, right? He's kind of like a middle of the road, kind of like just backup guy, I guess, sometimes, like an instant offense guy, because it just hasn't really worked out. So I think the additional opportunities, right, obviously still taking a high volume of threes. He's a really good 3-point shooter. Inside the arc, that's also pretty big too, right? Because if you're just shooting threes, right? You're not going to get to the 58 or, the 50% from the field or whatever type of play, right? But the fact that he can kind of score on all 3 levels and it's gotten even better against, tough defenses, right? Because they're putting a lot of their best defenders on him. It's not like before where he's kind of just like a third guy out there. So you can just kind of put whomever on him. Like, no, he's getting, some really tough assignments where guys are trying to take him out and slow down the Miami Heat offense. So I think all-star wise, I think he's played at the level of an all-star. I'm just skeptical that he's actually going to get voted in as an all-star, right? Like I don't think he won't be an all-star starter. And then in terms of the reserves, the guard spot is tough because you still have some other guys, right, that have played at a really high level, like a Cade Cunningham and some of these other guys, right, who weren't all-stars last year, but they are this year. But I think he's definitely played at an all-star level. It's just a matter of will he actually get in? That's the part where I'm a little bit more skeptical about it. But I think, because we had the Herro conversations last year where it's like, hey, they went to the finals without him. And then, you're kind of waiting for him in the postseason and he's got the number one offensive load without Jimmy and he didn't really produce. What do you do about that? But I think for the most part, he's gotten better. So that's kind of nice to see. That's the silver lining about this season for him. But all-star, yeah. But do I think he'll make it and actually be it? That's where I'm a little bit more skeptical. But he could be, he could easily be an injury replacement because there's already guys that won't be all-stars. Like maybe Embiid might get named an all-star, but he won't actually play. He'll be, he'll get an injury replacement, something like that.
Yeah, go ahead, Adrian. You're good.
Yeah, I think he definitely all-star level. And yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on what Chris said. Yeah, I don't know if he gets in though. He should get in, but I don't know if he gets in. The games that he's had and what he's done against the defenses, these 30-point games. I know he had like 1 40-point game, something like that. But a lot of 30-point games. I think his confidence going into this season has like skyrocketed, and that's what you're seeing on the floor as far as him offensively. So he took his game to another level, man. That's what we really wanted. But are we going to see it in the playoffs? Time will tell. But he's the only one doing it, right now. Like it's almost like he has to, and he putting the team on his back. So respect to Tyler for that. But all-star level play definitely.
So before we close, you mentioned that Tyler Herro is pretty much doing it all by himself. Why do you think, Terry Rozier hasn't worked out for this Miami Heat team, Adrian?
I just think we expected Terry to play to a level that he just not producing at. Like what we had for Terry and Tyler for this backcourt, for all they were saying the whole summer, uh, top duo in the league or tops in the league, man, and that didn't come true, man. But Terry, I don't know, man. Maybe Terry ain't got it no more. Maybe he just need to stay on the bench, come off, do what he can, and that's like the Heat been missing a point guard, man, for a while. Like, so that's another thing that's like bothers me about Pat Riley. Should have went and got a real point guard or drafted one. I know the draft we've been going. We done got some good pickups the last couple years, but at the same time, it's like, why don't we get uh, positions that we know are going to actually better the team and not just the way y'all want to play basketball. Like Spo wants to play basketball a certain way, and you need a point guard to do that, and you also need a big to do that. But do they think that? No, but everybody and they mama can see on the floor that they need. So, but I don't know, Terry. I just feel like Terry ain't got it no more, man.
And Chris, what do you think about Terry Rozier?
Yeah,
I mean, 'cause he was supposed to be that dynamic scorer that the
Right.
Miami Heat needed, especially when Jimmy Butler's out. I think that was like the biggest thing is that at least you have Terry, so that when Jimmy Butler's out, Terry Rozier now can carry at least some of the offense.
Yeah, it's kind of
Expected though.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? Because you look at what he did in Charlotte, right? And he was giving you basically 20 a game for the Hornets. Now, I mean, I guess you could say a lot of that was no LaMelo Ball. You're on a bad Charlotte Hornets team. So he could just be good stats, bad team type of guy. I know in Boston, he had some playoff runs right next to Tatum and Brown and others where he played pretty well. Different circumstances, but still. So I don't know. It may just be, it may just be you got like from the perspective of, sometimes you trade for these type of players and they're in a different environment and it doesn't work out, because again, like I said, in Charlotte, no LaMelo Ball, he's got the ball in his hands all the time, right? That's pretty much most of his offense. I know he played sometimes with LaMelo, but I mean, LaMelo hasn't really been healthy at all in the last few seasons. Whereas, here he's actually got to spend more time next to other guys like Tyler Herro, like, Jimmy or Bam or whomever. And that's the tough part. And, really with his style of play, he may just be better suited as a backup six-man type scoring guard off the bench. He may just not be good enough to be a starting point guard, on like a playoff contender team. That may just be, kind of his fate. That's tough for him. I mean, obviously he got the money beforehand, but when his contract is up, he's probably going to be like a mid-level exception type guy or something like that. There's no way he gets a big deal anymore. So it may have just been, I mean, I guess he's better than, whatever Lowry is now, which so I guess it's an upgrade from that. But I think you were still expecting somewhere close to, a decent starting point guard, for a contender. And you just haven't gotten that. He hasn't been efficient. He hasn't been healthy, I don't think necessarily either. So maybe that's part of the problem. But I guess with Herro, it's good that you got him. But I think, like you said, you were hoping to get a little bit more out of both of them, where like both of them are playing at a high level, not just Tyler Herro. That takes some pressure off Herro. But, it's just tough because, to go from thinking you have Damian Lillard and then you got to settle for Terry Rozier, it's a major downgrade, right? Because, obviously, if you have a Dame type player, you're going to get much better and much more consistent guard play. But, obviously he's a much higher caliber guy. So it just seems like it just hasn't worked out. I mean, they didn't give up a lot to get him. I know it was like a future first or something like that. But sometimes these moves just don't work, right? Like, teams sometimes will make moves that seem good. We thought it was good when we talked about it on the podcast, and he just hasn't been able to do a whole lot. So disappointing, but it is what it is, I guess.
I think that's us as fans just had very high expectations for Terry, and it just didn't pan out. That's all. Because a lot of people are saying, "Oh yeah, we're getting Terry, scary Terry's back," and it's like, nah, he not scary at all. So
Well, I mean, nobody really thought he would be playing this bad. Like he's shooting like 7% from the three or something like that,
yeah,
or he's like
Mhm.
7 of like 50
Yeah.
from. You know what I mean? No one would have ever thought he would be playing this bad. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So, like in the grand scheme of things, they move Jimmy, they need to move Terry, and then they also need to move Duncan. If they can move those three guys, especially how Duncan's contract next season is like partially guaranteed, and start the rebuild. I know that like a lot of Miami Heat fans, they want to compete, but sometimes you have to lose to win. So,
Mhm.
Chris, please let the people know before we close, where can they find your podcast, and just tell the people again, what your show is about and like what you guys do, and then we'll go to Adrian.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is Christopher from the Off Ball Takes podcast. Normally we're a duo. It's me and Yarby. Usually we do, those videos together. General NBA talk twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. Obviously, you can find us on YouTube at the OBT podcast. You can also find us on, on most of the socials, right? Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at the OBT podcast. Same thing. So, thanks for having me.
And Adrian, go ahead.
yes, sir. I'm Adrian with the Rainy Day Pod, covering all South Florida sports teams. Miami Dolphins, Miami Hurricanes, Miami Heat, and the Florida Panthers with my boy Palm Beach Frank, man. It's always a good time. Catch us on all socials at Rainy Day Pod and YouTube. Appreciate you, Martel, man.
Yes, sir. So we have 69 people in the building, guys. Make sure that you head over to their platforms, like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you guys for all the support.